Revelation 3671, from the 29th of January 1946. What you will bind on earth. What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. These are my words which I gave to the disciples when I sent them out into the world. And much more spiritual meaning is hidden in these words than people believe to recognize when reading the letters. It is the spiritual substance embodied on earth in the human stage in a bound state as long as it is still under the control of the one who gave rise to my creation. Under the control of my adversary, who also placed his will, which had been turned away from me, into the beings he begot by using my strength. The beings were indeed given the right of self-determination. They could decide for themselves whether they wanted to acknowledge me or my adversary as Lord. And in free will it decided in favor of the latter. Thus it subordinated itself to the adversary's will, which now no longer freely gave its will and rendered the beingness incapable of liberating itself. Therefore I came down to earth to restore the strength of will to people who wanted to accept my gift from me. I wanted to redeem them, to release them from the adversary's power, however, only on condition that they did not resist themselves, that they accepted my help in their will to become free. Thus the human being's spiritual essence was bound until it was redeemed through my love and grace. And this act of salvation therefore requires the human being's free will if it is to take effect. As a human being I died on the cross and, as a human being, acquired immense strength for people from God which everyone could use to strengthen his will so that he could renounce God's adversary. But the transmission of strength could only take place on a path which I showed people, which I walked myself in order to give them a living example. I taught people love and lived a life of love myself in order to prove to them the truth of my word about the strength of love. Thus, if the human being wants to make use of the blessings of the act of salvation, he has to make himself receptive for the transmission of strength through a life of love. He must first acknowledge me, believe in me and in my act of salvation and then fulfill my commandments in order to free himself with my support from the power of the one who holds him captive until his will is strengthened by my help. And I sent my disciples into the world to teach love, to proclaim me and my act of salvation to people and to show them the path on which they could attain freedom for their soul. And people's striving on earth is decisive for eternity. Anyone who can free himself from the adversary's power on earth is eternally free, but anyone who does not make use of earthly time, who does not acknowledge me myself on earth and appeals to me for support, remains in Satan's power and also enters the beyond bound, for without me there is no redemption. But I do not touch freedom of will because the being turned away from me in free will and must now also find its way back to me in free will. Now my disciples brought people the light, they brought them my teaching, they proclaimed me myself and my will to help weak people, they brought them the truth, and everyone only needed to make use of it in order to change the bound state into a free one, yet this had to happen of his own free will. Anyone who did not make use of the opportunity, who did not listen to my disciples, who did not believe them, also made my working on him impossible. I could not release him from my adversary's control. He remained in a bound state as long as he stayed on earth and entered the kingdom of the beyond bound, that is under Satan's control. My disciples' work on them was unsuccessful. In earthly life the human being's will shall already decide for me or my adversary, and I give all means of help into the human being's hand. And therefore I sent my disciples into the world who were to preach the gospel, who were to testify aloud of my work of love for the whole of humanity, who were to speak of the battle with my adversary, which was only meant for the weak and will of people whom I wanted to help to get free from his power. My disciples were to continue my act of salvation. I gave them the commission to do so. I gave them the power of the keys. I sent them into the world to provide information in my stead to all those who desired information, to proclaim to them the pure truth which they had received from me. And therefore they were active as my representatives on earth, and anyone who heard them heard me, anyone who took their words to heart accepted me and was helped for eternity. For the human being's only goal is to be released